Welcome back to Ernstrom Spinal Rehab. This is Dr. Ed Ernstrom. I'm going to have to talk really fast today because I have some really good information, too much information. I'm running into the same problem that I had on Tuesday where I was running out of time. I don't want this carrot to turn into a pumpkin and can't use this on Instagram today, okay? But first of all, I want to do some housekeeping. If you are watching this on a social media platform like Instagram or Facebook, like, share, comment below, tag it to somebody that you think can use this information. If you're watching this on YouTube, very similarly, make comments below, ask questions. It's wonderful. I haven't really had a lot of comments yet on any of my videos. I want to help you guys. I want to answer your questions. And if this really helped you, say it, tell me it helped you. I'd like to know some feedback about these things. And also, hit the notification bell, hit the like button, subscribe to the station so that you can get notifications about future content that I come up with in the future. Also, so you can also look back and see all the previous videos that I've done over the last so many weeks, okay? So, really quick. So, last week we talked about energy systems and different types of track and field events that we use those energy systems from, and just as examples, okay? And then we also talked about on Tuesday about how when we're in the middle of a fasted state, where and how we get blood sugar while we are not eating, okay? How our body produces its own blood sugar through this beautiful process called gluconeogenesis, where we take our fat, and every fat molecule is this glycerol ring, and it's like a wind chime. It has a ring at the top with this glycerol, and then you have these chimes coming down, fatty acid chains, and how gluconeogenesis actually cleaves off those fatty acid chains from that glycerol ring, and that glycerol ring now can become glucose. And we can now cleave those fatty acid chains into shorter fatty acid chains called ketones. Beta hydroxybutyrate, acetyl-CoA, acetoacetate. We're not going to worry about the chemical names. Let's just worry about that they are now something called a ketone. All right, so now that we're getting into our exercise state, while we're in ketosis or in a fasted state, where do we get our energy from if we're running out of sugar, or if we're not eating sugars, right? Okay, I just told you, gluconeogenesis does provide sugars from our fat stores, okay? So we can reverse engineer that back to sugar because those sugars became the triglycerides in the first place, okay? So now we're just making them back into the sugars where they came from. All right, cool. All right, now let's talk about max heart rate and how it actually dictates our energy systems. So maximum exercise heart rate is 220 minus your age. Let me repeat that once again, 220 minus your age. Now, there's some nuance to this or some specificity depending on your total cardiovascular capacity. Because if you're somebody like me that's 42 that just ran 4 miles this morning, compared to somebody that's 42 that didn't run 4 miles and hasn't run ever in their life, or they were an old athlete back in their high school days, but then hasn't really done any running in his desk job and has no cardiovascular capacity in their 40s, their max heart rate is going to be different from mine. But we're just going to take the general average person who does no exercise or mild exercise. Their total max heart rate is going to be 220 minus their age. So I'm 42. Let's take an example. That person that does mild exercise or at least goes walking, their max heart rate is going to be about 178. Okay. And so if they get to a point where their max heart rate they are in an anaerobic state where they're not utilizing oxygen, but they are burning sugars at that state, okay? Now, in that anaerobic glycolysis or anaerobic sugar burning state is going to be somewhere about 80 to 90, maybe 100, up to, if you want to say 100%. If they're getting to 100%, they're going to just fall down, okay? But if they're anywhere from 80% or higher, they are in that anaerobic no oxygen state, okay? So they can only use sugar, okay? Ketones cannot be used in an anaerobic state. Ketones are broken down and used for energy inside our cells in an aerobic state, in the presence of oxygen, okay? So if you are exercising this way, if you're weightlifting and you're doing 1 to 5 rep maxes, you are going to be in a state where you are going to burn through only sugar. You can't use ketones. But to recover, you've now used all of your sugars that are in your cells at that moment. So you have to wait for them to replenish. Okay? So as I mentioned before in previous videos, your energy recovery from an anaerobic glycolytic or anaerobic sugar burning state can take up to a minute, minute and a half on average when you're eating sugars. Now, if you're not eating sugars because you're trying to combat insulin resistance, or you're in a fasted state and you haven't eaten anything, you need to recover longer, because now you're having to wait for gluconeogenesis to kick in, or to have sugars delivered from your liver to get to your muscles. They're not stored in your muscles because you just burned through the glycogen that was in your muscle cells. Okay, so now you have to wait maybe 2 minutes, maybe 2.5. It's wise to do this. You need to not let your emotions get the best of you and think that, when I used to eat carbs, or when I was eating breakfast before I came here, I threw down that protein shake before I got to the gym, I could just go from one set to the next with only 1 minute waiting time in between sets. No, you have to be wise. You have to start thinking about that you are now doing a different habit, and you have to exercise different according to that habit. Okay, so recovery is going to be a lot more important when it comes to anaerobic glycolysis or anaerobic sugar burning. Okay, now let's get into aerobic sugar burning or aerobic glycolysis. Now you can use ketones for sugar for aerobic capacities, okay, because they can be used and burned alongside sugars. Okay, so now you have this wonderful hybrid system going on where you have two different energy systems, just like a hybrid car has gas and has electricity. Now you have ketones and sugars. Wonderful. You can go better and longer and burn cleaner with less oxidation, so you can actually have a better when you breathe out, you're still breathing out CO2s, but you have less lactic acid, you have less oxidants, and so you don't need to have any kind of breakdown of your mitochondria. It's this wonderful thing. Okay, so but you can still get to a point where now you've and that energy system is going to be about 65% to that 80%. So anywhere between those ranges is going to be aerobic glycolysis, but we're also going to do ketolysis into that. Okay, so because those ketones can actually jump into the what we call the Krebs cycle, which is the citric acid cycle, which is what we use to get more energy out of each sugar molecule. Okay, ketones can just jump right into that. So from there, now below that, we have something that we call the golden fat burning zone, which is going to be about 55 to 65 total max heart rate. Now, when we are in that state, you still have to exercise for about 10 total minutes at that heart rate before you actually really start to get into something that we call beta oxidation, which is where we start to utilize our fat for energy. Okay, and beta oxidation is not gluconeogenesis. They're two different chemical processes that happen inside the same cell. Okay, so if you want to use fat to actually burn inside your cells, yes, you can exercise at that rate and burn fat. However, again, like I mentioned before, if you are in the presence of insulin, lipolysis, the breakdown of your stored fat in your fat cells cannot break down, and so getting the fat out of your cells to be used in the state of exercise, it's inhibited. Okay, so let's start using some of the advice that I've given in the recent videos with like intermittent fasting and maybe even ketogenics, is that we can actually exercise in those states. Like I just mentioned before, we get blood sugar and we get ketones that we can burn in an aerobic state. Now, if you plan to do anaerobic activities, you will need to recover longer between bouts so that you can utilize gluconeogenesis and maybe beta oxidation to help you recover in those. But beta oxidation is a much slower process, and you need to let your heart rate get down low enough to it, long enough to use your fat. Okay. Now that we talked about all of those things, if we're in a fasted state, and I mentioned in my video, after 3 hours, you're getting close to being done absorbing your food. Then by hour 5 or 6, you've already had your glycogen kick in at about hour 4 for getting energy from your liver. And then you have this gluconeogenesis start to kick in at about hour 5 or 6 once you're done absorbing food. Okay. Now, there's that convergence at about hour 16 that you are now being more dominantly using gluconeogenesis, fat utilization, for making blood sugar and also making ketones. And you're less dominant with utilizing your glycogen from your liver. What happens if you are in a glycolytic state longer, in the middle of a fasted state, using aerobic glycolysis, aerobic fat burning, or sorry, not fat burning, aerobic sugar burning, and ketones? Okay, now you've actually taken that utilization and you've shifted that over to where you now have less available glycogen in your blood, or sorry, in your liver and in your muscles. You're now forcing your body to have to get to gluconeogenesis sooner, at a more dominant level sooner. You understand where I'm going here? I'm saying that you can actually use this as a hack so that if you are trying to lose body weight and body fat, you can do this. Okay, it's called that SAID principle, specific adaptations by an imposed demand. You are imposing a demand that will give you the adaptation that you're looking for. Okay, so now there is a couple nuances that I'm not going to get into in this video, where and why that might get blocked. But again, it all comes down to whether you have the capacity to get to your fat stores in the first place. Okay, so again, insulin, cortisol, and estrogen will inhibit that with that hormone sensitive lipase that will, that will not allow you to do that. Okay, now also using this as an example, while I still have a couple minutes left here, I got through this a lot faster. This is my third take on this video. Oh, because my other videos, I got to the 15 minutes and I still had so much more to say. Anyways, we got about 3 minutes left. So let's just say that you are at a point where your heart rate dictates your energy system. Okay, now if you're so used to running at a certain pace, and for some reason you feel like you're not able to run as hard and as fast and have the same oxygen capacity that you're used to, maybe it's because you're not looking at your heart rate monitor. And if your heart rate is too high at that same pace that you were trying to do before, you might be actually in an anaerobic state. And you need to then slow down, recover, so that you can then get your heart rate down low enough so that you can get into an aerobic state where you can get into let your beta oxidation of fat burning, and also maybe even utilizing your gluconeogenesis to get that sugars back up so that you can then finish whatever you're trying to do. Okay, so don't feel like you're a failure if you've actually gotten to a point where you hit a wall in the middle of a workout, regardless of whether it's a run, a weightlifting capacity, a circuit training bout, all those different things. Pay attention to your heart rate. Your heart rate is going to tell you what energy you're using at that moment. And if you're utilizing an energy that you're not wanting to use right at that moment because it's going to force you to hit a wall, then you need to slow down, okay? Recover, and then hit it again, okay? Because your brain will memorize the last rep that you did, and if the last rep that you did was garbage, your brain's going to memorize that, and then you're going to end up having to do garbage sets until you fix your mechanics again, okay? So I think I got out everything that I wanted to say today. See you guys next time. Again, hit the notification bell, like this, subscribe to the station if you're watching this on YouTube. And if you're watching this on Instagram or Facebook, like, subscribe, follow this. Also, I'm going to be tagging this on Twitter now to my friend at Tony Colombo on at 97.1 FM here at local news talk radio station that we have that I advertise on. He's my personality. He's my guy. I'm his guy, and we're helping each other out with all of this, with getting motivated, getting moving, and getting metabolic. All right, guys, we'll catch you next time. See ya.